Before the 19th century, life along the coastal regions of Europe was a constant ordeal, a relentless struggle overshadowed by the ever-present danger of death or abduction. Residents lived with the gnawing fear that at any moment their lives could be upended by ruthless attackers who struck without warning. These marauders were particularly merciless, singling out the most vulnerable children and women as their primary targets. For these unfortunate souls, the outcome was a grim fate. They were often forced into unpaid labor or subjected to the depraved whims of their captors, stripped of their dignity and freedom. Men faced no less horrific destinies. Many were cut down in cold blood, their lives extinguished in an instant, while others were shackled and dragged away to be sold as slaves in sprawling markets across distant lands. Yet this was only the tip of the iceberg, a mere glimpse into one of the darkest and most harrowing periods in the history of the white race, a nightmare that endured for centuries. Who were these fearsome figures, and what was the true extent of their power? Let us embark on a journey through time to unravel the chilling truth behind this era of terror and despair. The Mediterranean Sea has always been celebrated for its tranquil waters and rare storms, a natural advantage that transformed it into a thriving hub of trade and commerce. This narrow stretch of water, bordered by diverse territories such as Italy, Spain, Libya, Turkey, and countless other regions, became a bustling crossroads where merchants from every corner of the globe converged to exchange goods and amass wealth. The sea's strategic location and favorable conditions fostered an economic boom, drawing in traders eager to capitalize on its riches. However, this very prosperity sowed the seeds for the emergence of a formidable and menacing force, the pirates of North Africa. In the early centuries, coastal regions like Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Tripoli were regarded as cradles of maritime excellence, renowned for their advanced seafaring traditions. These lands were not only steeped in a rich nautical heritage, but also boasted an impressive arsenal of sturdy warships and cutting-edge weaponry, a testament to their maritime ingenuity. Their naval forces stood as the strongest defense for these nations, a symbol of their dominance over the seas. Yet this focus on building elite navies and crafting superior vessels came with a heavy price. The governments poured vast resources into constructing these impressive fleets and training their sailors, leaving the ordinary people of these coastal communities mired in poverty and deprivation, struggling to survive in such harsh conditions. Many of these naval personnel turned to desperate measures. Some of the very forces tasked with protecting their nations banded together to form pirate crews, leveraging their skills and ships to plunder the immense wealth that flowed through the Mediterranean, a veritable treasure trove of trade. Armed with their advanced weaponry and seasoned sailors, these pirate bands swiftly rose to prominence, seizing enormous hauls of goods and bringing substantial profits back to their homelands and families. In the eyes of their people, they transformed from common outlaws into celebrated heroes, their daring exploits fueling the rapid growth of piracy across North Africa. The Mediterranean's central role as an economic powerhouse further amplified this phenomenon, providing the perfect environment for piracy to thrive. As trade routes flourished, so did the opportunities for plunder, and thus the golden age of North African piracy was born, a time when these seafaring raiders ruled the waves with unmatched ferocity. As piracy flourished in the region, North Africa was also a battleground for intense religious and ethnic conflicts, particularly between Catholics and Jews. These tensions reached a critical juncture in 1492, with the Grenada War a defining moment that intensified the strife. Spanish forces launched a surprise assault on the city of Grenada, leaving countless Jewish families displaced, their homes destroyed, and their lives shattered within mere months. For the survivors, the shame and loss were unbearable. Refusing to accept this humiliation, many of these resilient individuals pooled their remaining resources and formed their own pirate bands, driven by a burning desire for revenge against their oppressors. With their sharp intellect and fierce determination, these Jewish warriors quickly ascended to dominance, seizing control of the Mediterranean Sea. Their reputation spread like wildfire, drawing skilled fighters from across the region who were eager to serve under the command of these formidable Jewish captains. These pirate crews, led by their astute leaders, became a force to be reckoned with, their influence extending far beyond the Mediterranean as their power grew unchecked. By the 16th century, piracy in North Africa had reached unprecedented heights. Nearly every inhabitant of the region was involved with a pirate band in some capacity, transforming these groups from mere criminals into powerful entities. Their leaders were no longer just pirate captains. They had evolved into veritable lords, ruling over entire cities or even multiple territories with an iron grip. These pirate lords wielded immense resources, commanding armies and arsenals that rivaled those of entire nations. Their dominance was not confined to the sea. They controlled vast swaths of land, amassing wealth and power that made them a significant threat to Europe. With their elite forces, fleets numbering thousands of men and dozens of massive ships, these North African pirates relentlessly plundered European trade routes, strangling the continent's economy. They easily crushed any naval force daring enough to challenge them or venture into their territory, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Their reign of terror was a constant reminder of the vulnerability of European coastal communities. The North African pirates were not merely after gold, jewels, or everyday goods. They sought something far more sinister: the crews of the ships they attacked. In the 16th and 17th centuries, white slaves commanded an extraordinarily high price in the Ottoman Empire, and Arab nations like Egypt making them a lucrative commodity. These pirates operated with chilling precision, often stalking their targets slowly and methodically, luring their prey into carefully laid traps. Once their victims were within reach, they would launch a ferocious, all-out assault, overwhelming them with sheer numbers and brutality. Ships under attack often surrendered quickly, knowing escape was impossible against such overwhelming odds. Historical records even recount the terrifying tactics these pirates employed to instill fear. Some would stuff garlic into their mouths, then pull it out during an attack to demonstrate their bloodlust, forcing their victims into submission faster and ensuring a swift victory. For those who surrendered swiftly, a grim mercy was granted. They were spared immediate death, only to be sold into slavery in distant markets. But those who resisted or disobeyed faced a gruesome fate. They were either hanged in the middle of the ship's deck as a warning to others, or hacked to pieces in front of the entire crew to instill terror and maintain control. The constant slaughter eventually deterred European merchant fleets and navies from venturing out to sea, as the fear of encountering these barbaric pirates became overwhelming. Many believed that staying on land would keep them safe, but the pirates had other plans. Instead of hunting on the open ocean, they began targeting specific coastal regions, selecting their next victims directly from maps with ruthless precision. In 1551, the entire population of 6,000 people on the island of Gozo was wiped out by North African pirates, who sold the survivors at a market in Tripoli, Libya, in less than 2 days, a chilling display of their efficiency. 3 years later, the Italian town of Vieste suffered a similar fate. Half its population was sold into slavery, while the other half, who dared to resist, was massacred on the spot as a brutal lesson to others, their blood staining the earth as a warning to all who might defy them. For those captives whose families were wealthy, there was a slim chance of freedom if they could afford the exorbitant ransom demanded by the pirates. In response to the growing crisis, churches near the European coast began establishing ransom funds to secure the release of their parishioners, hoping to protect their communities from further loss. However, with the sheer number of captives and the astronomical prices demanded, only a small fraction were ever freed, leaving most families in despair. The majority of the population lived in misery, and despite the suffering of their people, most European monarchs were powerless to act. The pirates' forces were too strong and too aggressive, leaving the rulers with little choice but to endure the humiliation in silence. Some governments resorted to negotiating with the pirates, paying protection fees to ensure the safety of their trade routes and naval fleets. Yet this only fueled the growth of piracy further, as the influx of money strengthened the pirate lords' grip on the region, turning their reign into an even greater menace. As the pirate lords' power continued to expand through the following decades, their influence became a cause for concern even for the mighty Ottoman Empire in the east. Fearing that their neighbors might ally with Europe to overthrow them, the Ottoman sultans proposed a strategic alliance with the North African pirate lords. The goal was clear: weaken their mutual enemy Europe by combining forces and leveraging their combined strength. The pirates readily agreed, eager to secure the protection of one of the most powerful empires of the time. This alliance ensured that the pirates would not attack Ottoman ships, while the pirate lords gained the backing of a formidable military power that shielded them from external threats. Now, any ship that dared to attack a pirate vessel would face the wrath of the Ottoman Empire's elite warriors and sailors, the best in the world at the time, turning the seas into a battleground where few could stand against them. Under the leadership of an Ottoman naval general named Barbarossa, this alliance became an unstoppable force, dominating every battle for decades and casting a shadow of fear across the Mediterranean. Europeans came to know Barbarossa as Redbeard, a name derived from an Italian term that reflected his fearsome reputation, and the blood-red hue of his beard, a symbol of his unrelenting ferocity. Barbarossa was not only a notorious pirate, but also a brilliant strategist, a nightmare for every European fleet that crossed his path. His leadership solidified the alliance's power, making it a dominant force that seemed invincible. It wasn't until 1571 that this formidable coalition was finally defeated in the Battle of Lepanto, one of the most ferocious and large-scale naval battles in human history, where the clash of steel and cannon fire echoed across the waves. A coalition of European forces, led by Spain and Italy, managed to break the alliance apart, achieving a resounding victory that reverberated through the ages. However, this triumph did little to curb the spread of piracy. With the Ottoman alliance dissolved, the pirates no longer had to engage in large-scale wars against European militaries. Instead, they could refocus on their original goals: kidnapping, slave trading, and plundering cities and trade routes throughout the Mediterranean. By the 17th century, piracy had reached its peak, with hundreds of thousands of Europeans captured and sold into slavery, their cries lost to the winds. At the same time, Europe's inability to unite due to political and religious differences prevented them from mounting a coordinated defense against the pirates. Seizing this weakness, the most powerful pirate bands began venturing farther afield, targeting richer territories deep within Europe, such as the United Kingdom, the Irish Isles, and even the remote shores of Iceland. Some of the most daring crews crossed the Atlantic Ocean to raid new lands, conducting lightning-fast attacks that lasted no more than 12 hours, or a day at most, before vanishing into the horizon, leaving behind a trail of devastation. The relentless raids took a heavy toll on European communities, particularly in coastal regions where the threat was most immediate. In England, the constant abductions of fishermen in the bays led many to abandon their livelihoods, their boats left to rot on the shore as fear gripped their hearts. This exodus severely impacted the nation's economy, as fishing was a primary source of income that sustained countless families. Some villages were forced to pay tribute to the pirates, offering up people and wealth in exchange for temporary peace, a bitter compromise that left them vulnerable. In August 1621, a particularly brutal pirate band attacked the Cornwall Bay of Mount in England. To secure peace for the survivors, the region was forced to surrender 60 men, women, and children as slaves, along with a vast amount of wealth, their lives traded like commodities in a cruel marketplace. Desperate to address the crisis, the English government devised a plan in December 1640 to raise funds to free 5,000 English slaves, their pleas echoing through the halls of power. Despite their efforts to negotiate and seek aid from allies, the pirates refused to release the captives, their hearts hardened by greed, leaving little choice but to prepare for war. However, with their military and population already depleted by years of conflict and loss, the English forces were no match for the North African pirates, who emerged victorious once again. The lives of ordinary Europeans remained steeped in hardship, with no immediate end in sight, their hopes dimmed by the shadow of oppression. For those who were captured, the horrors of slavery awaited a fate that varied depending on their strength and skills. The strongest and healthiest slaves were sold to ruthless traders, who transported them to distant lands in the east. There they were forced to toil for up to 10 hours a day in the scorching Sahara Desert, their bodies battered by the sun, with only a single ladle of water to sustain them through the relentless heat. Others were sent to work on Jewish-owned farms, tending to crops and harvests under grueling conditions that tested their endurance. Those with shipbuilding skills were comparatively luckier, assigned to less physically demanding tasks in workshops, though their lives were still far from easy, marked by the constant threat of punishment. The most tragic fate of all befell those who became galley slaves aboard the very pirate ships that captured them, a sentence that condemned them to a living hell. These slaves spent the rest of their lives confined to the ship's lower decks, rowing endlessly to power the vessel through the treacherous seas. Their hands, feet, and necks were shackled to the oars, and benches which were shared by 3 to 4 people at a time, their bodies pressed together in a suffocating embrace of misery. They were never allowed to leave their positions, even for the most basic human needs, like relieving themselves their dignity stripped away by the chains that bound them. Their diet consisted of spoiled fish or meat paired with rotten vegetables, a meager sustenance that wreaked havoc on their digestive systems and left them weak and frail. Unable to move, they were forced to eat, sleep, and work in their own filth. Surrounded by the waste, they produced the stench, a constant companion in their dark prison. The galley slaves were denied clothing regardless of the weather, whether blistering heat or biting cold, leaving their bodies exposed and vulnerable, a practice that contributed to an alarmingly high mortality rate. They were also subjected to relentless beatings by their overseers, who whipped them until their skin tore and bled the cracks of the lash, a cruel symphony that ensured the ship moved at the desired speed. The ship's design facilitated this cruelty. A long walkway ran down the center of the rowing benches with a raised platform that allowed the overseers to easily access and beat the slaves, their cries unheard above the roar of the waves. The slaves were only permitted to rest when the ship anchored or paused during a battle, a brief respite in an otherwise unending ordeal. In these skirmishes, their fate hung in the balance. If their ship won, they would continue their torturous existence as human engines, their strength drained by each stroke of the oar. If their ship lost, they faced a sudden death from enemy cannon fire, their lives snuffed out in an instant. The brutal conditions left their wounds perpetually unhealed, exacerbated by the filth they lived in, a breeding ground for infection. Even a small cut could become infected by their own waste, leading to festering sores, and in many cases, necrosis that ate away at their flesh. The lower decks were breeding grounds for diseases, typhus, dysentery, and more, further shortening the already brief lives of these slaves, their bodies broken by the relentless toll of their captivity. The only reprieve they ever received was a rare bath during a thunderstorm, the rain a fleeting mercy that washed away some of the grime, or when the pirates, unable to tolerate the stench below deck, doused them with water to flush out the waste, only for the cycle of suffering to begin anew. As piracy continued to spread, the Mediterranean became a golden opportunity for seafaring outlaws from around the world, drawn by the promise of riches and power. Pirates flocked to the region from places like Arabia, Turkey, the Netherlands, Greece, and even England, their ships cutting through the waves like predators on the hunt. Among the most notorious was Jack Ward, an English pirate who gained infamy during this era, his name whispered with dread along the coasts. Piracy was not limited to men. Women also formed their own formidable crews, proving their mettle on the high seas. One of the most famous female pirate captains of the 17th century was Saida al-Hurra, who rose to become the governor of Tétouan in Morocco. Her authority, a beacon of strength in a male-dominated world. Even the son of Barbarossa, known as Sinan Reis, followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a feared pirate in his own right. His legacy, a continuation of the family's reign of terror. The unchecked expansion of piracy led to the devastation of countless cities across multiple continents, as the pirates' brutal strength left destruction and despair in its wake. In 2004, a historian from Ohio State University estimated that at least 5 million white Europeans were captured during this 2-century period, a staggering toll that barely captures the full extent of the suffering. However, since this figure is based on averages, many scholars believe the true number could be far higher, a silent testament to the scale of the tragedy. Despite numerous attempts by various nations to combat the pirates of the Mediterranean and beyond, they all succumbed to the pirates' ruthless savagery, their defenses crumbling under the weight of the onslaught. It wasn't until the late 17th century, when the United States declared war on these pirate bands, that a significant challenge emerged, a beacon of hope in the darkness. This conflict, which spanned nearly 2 centuries, was a desperate struggle to reclaim freedom for sailors worldwide, their lives hanging in the balance. It wasn't until the late 19th century that substantial progress was made, as the United States and Sweden formed an alliance to eradicate the era of pirate dominance once and for all. This coalition not only succeeded in dismantling many pirate bands, but also inspired a powerful movement among enslaved white Europeans who rose up against their oppressors with newfound courage. The combined might of this alliance turned the tide, their ships cutting through the pirate fleets like a knife through butter. As pirate strongholds fell one by one, the voices of the oppressed grew louder, their resolve strengthened by the promise of liberation. After more than 400 years of terror, the nightmare of white Europeans finally came to an end, a hard-won victory that marked the close of a dark chapter in history. The story of the North African pirates and the suffering they inflicted on countless Europeans is a somber chapter in history, one that reveals the depths of human cruelty and the resilience of those who endured it. The scars of this era linger as a reminder of the cost of unchecked power and the importance of unity in the face of oppression. The tales of bravery and sacrifice, from the Jewish survivors who turned to piracy for revenge to the enslaved galley slaves who toiled in silence, are etched into the fabric of time. As we reflect on this dark period, we honor the memory of those who suffered and celebrate the eventual triumph of freedom over tyranny, a legacy that continues to inspire us today.
Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, drop a comment below, and please like, share and subscribe my channel.